which we're going to be having a look at in a short while. So a little bit of change in tact in the sense of what we're moving from to now is, as I've said before, it's a bold move away from full ERP, trying to crowbar everything into one system, to what Sage are calling best-in-class financials. So up on the screen there, I've just put a little bit of an infographic there. I'll not read every point verbatim, but to touch on a few points there, Sage 200, for anybody that's on Sage 50 or Sage 200, you'll realize it's a traditional on-premise server-based solution. So that comes with a lot of sort of maintenance for servers, the cost involved in that as well. Moving over onto the right-hand side with Intacct, it is a true cloud product. So you're logging into a web page, it's hosted on AWS servers by Sage, and it's all baked into the cost of that as well. So it's a move away to that cloud. So anybody doing digital transformation pieces or anything else like that and want to move away from traditional server-based systems, Intacct's the way forward with that. In terms of reporting, and you'll see as we go through this now, what we find with Sage 200 is we're looking at those traditional static reports. So we're logging in, we're having a look, we're running a report, we get it out, we can take it to CSV. You'll see when we have a look at Intacct shortly how the dimensional reporting feeds. So it's all around real-time information. How can we get information quickly to finance leaders? And whether that's across multiple companies or whether that's at single company level as well, which moves me nicely onto my next point around multi-entity. So within that Sage 200 environment, we know if we've got 4, 5, 6 different companies in there, we're hitting the cog in the top right corner, logging in and out of various companies. If we do a journal in one company, we have to move to the next company to then do the same journal on the opposite side, and so on and so forth. Intacct is natively designed to handle multi-entity companies. And you'll see when I do a little bit of a demo later on. And what that comes with is a lot of automation tools around that as well. So automating the consolidation piece, whether we're moving up funds into hold companies or transferring funds between various companies, even into trading between those companies. And it also comes with the auto elimination process as well. One point on automation, you'll see from Intacct when we go through how we've got the ability to do advancements in workflows with smart rules and smart events. Because it's a cloud product, we have the ability to then trigger certain things within there. Traditionally with on-premise solutions, it's either a piece of hard code that goes in there or something like that to make a system behave, or bespoke work that we want. With Intacct, we can handle all that natively within the solution. Which moves on to the integration bits. I can see a few familiar faces on the call that I know have got bespoke integrations in some of their solutions. With Intacct, we've got a modern API. It's a cloud-based platform, so it's wrapped in an open API, which means we can go out and connect apps and applications easily to software. So it's a bit of a shift away from doing the old-fashioned SDK files on servers that pull pieces of bespoke and SQL queries. We're actually then opening up the floor to say, right, go and get various different solutions for yourselves as well. In terms of scalability, as I've said before, it's built for growing companies. So anybody acquiring companies, we can add entities onto the platform in minutes as well. We're not having to set up databases and set up new charts of accounts. We can configure all that quite quickly within Intacct itself. The level of financial controls we have in there, we've got some really advanced approval processes in there that can be even approving a journal entry. So if we've got a finance junior that's posting month-end journals, we can get that to run through an approval process in there. We can approve at AP level, we can approve at AR level, we can approve at payment, we can approve at requisition. There's a multitude of different approval routes in there as well. I've touched on customization as well. You'll see some of that in there. And then more importantly is updates. So if anybody's experienced this on the call before with Sage 200, when you're coming up to an upgrade path or the end of a product lifecycle, you need to move on to the latest version. There's quite a lot of downtime as we recompile databases and stuff and move them on. Because Intacct is a cloud-based platform, you are always on the latest release. So every quarter, Intacct release an update. It happens in the background. It's tested against all the applications that you get in there. You experience no downtime. Log into Sage Intacct, there'll be a little notification to say you're currently on R4 release. You probably will be contacted by one of our account managers or success managers that will then walk you through the release that's happened in the background if we need to turn anything on as well. So you've got that, removing that need to have any experience of downtime and stuff as you upgrade platforms. It's going to happen automatically for you. So Intacct itself, I always drop this slide in any presentations that I do, just for anybody that's not seen it before, just to give you a flavour of what the platform actually looks like. So this is where I touch on how we get information quickly to finance professionals. So we're going to go into this screen a little bit later at the end of the demonstration, but it's just up there to show you in terms of what the visibility is and what data you can get at your fingertips within Sage Intacct. So what's it made up of and what is it? The biggest key difference with Intacct is something called dimensions. Now, maybe some of you on the call might have worked with dimensional accounting before, but the easiest way I can differentiate this between Sage 50, Sage 200 and where it is with Intacct now is using probably cost center and department as an example. So if we think of a traditional 2-tiered or 3-tiered nominal structure, we might be in a situation where we've got 5 offices. So we create 5 cost centers to capture revenue that's generated by those offices. What that then means is we're replicating nominal codes to attribute to all of those. They could be operating costs, they could be revenue. To give you a real world example, we've recently dealt with a not-for-profit organization who do just that. So each time they have an appeal comes in, they create a series of cost centers so that they can attribute revenue and costs to that particular appeal. They were at a point where they had 35,000 nominal codes, at which point it renders any reporting incomprehensible. If they try to run a report on that, run it by cost center, the system slows down, it breaks. What we have with dimensions and Intacct is a different way and a different angle of looking at that. So if I used a sales code, for example, 4,000, if we had all those cost centers, we'd have 4,000 Newcastle office, 4,000 Sheffield office, 4,000 Oakham office, 4,000 London office, and we'd have that big long ticker tape chart of accounts. With Intacct, we can simplify that process using the dimensions. So we would simply use location as a dimensional tag. So we could have one sales code of 4,000 and we could attribute 7 different dimensions to that. So it could be 4,000, location could be our Sheffield office on that transaction. It could be a department for sales. We could then add another classification. So how do we classify our business, revenue streams, so on and so forth. We could tag the customer, we could tag an employee, we could tag an item, or we could even tag the supplier. And that feeds throughout the entirety of the system. So that could be posting a journal, it could be an accounts payable invoice, it could be an accounts receivable invoice. What those dimensions then feed is our financial reporting out the other side. So if we were taking a standard P&L report, we'd have revenue at the top, we'd have operating expenses, we'd have net profit at the bottom. What we can then do in Intacct with the power of its reporting tool is say, right, take me that P&L and break it me out by location dimension. And all of a sudden the P&L report changes and we can now see it on each individual location. We could then say, I also then want to look at it at a particular classification of business, and the report changes again. So that dimensional accounting feeds what we get out in terms of financial reports. So we get the 7 out the box as standard. If you subscribe to any other modules in Sage Intacct, such as projects, such as inventory or contract, you then get another dimension added to your instance. So then you can start looking at per location, per project, per classification of business. And again, feeding all your financial reports. We also have the opportunity as well to purchase user-defined ones. So if you run out of dimensions and think that you actually want more dimensions, you can purchase more dimensions. But they are the building blocks of Sage Intacct, and they are what differentiates it from its predecessors in Sage 50 and Sage 200. Moving on to the platform itself, as I've said before, it's native from the get-go. It was a cloud-written product. It's not something like our competitors where we've moved a product onto the cloud. So we're seeing now with stuff like Dynamics and stuff like that, where they're trying to move customers onto a cloud version of it, which kind of comes with headaches. Intacct was built in 2009 before it was purchased by Sage in 2019, and it was actually written in the cloud from the get-go. So we don't experience any trouble there. As I've touched on, we've got that deep multi-dimensional accounting. Best of breed is a terminology that you use, which I'm going to come on to in the next slide, but that fresh and modern interface, which you saw before as well. So over in this cloud infograph, what you get out of the box with Intacct is the core financials. So everything that you would expect. So general ledger, accounts payable, accounts receivable, cash management, so on and so forth. Over on the right-hand side, we've got additional modules. Now, what we envisage with Intacct is you can start as small as a 2-person company that is looking for a cloud solution. And we can move right up to enterprise level solutions because the servers that they sit on are scalable as well. So we'll scale with the server and the volumes of data in there, but there will always be an additional module that we can add on to Sage Intacct as well. So should we need something such as budgeting and planning tools, there's an advanced budgeting and planning tool in there that can do trend forecasting and so on and so forth. Inventory management, the multi-entity and global consolidations piece in there as well. So we can start really small on that journey and we can grow out to enterprise level. So we're not experiencing having to change solutions very often, because as we know, you probably only want to do it once or twice in your lifetime when you work in finance, because it can be a bit of a headache. With Intacct, we can grow out with it. Up at the top there, in terms of industry-specific solutions, so the one that I referenced just before was a non-for-profit with the 35,000 nominal codes. We can actually tailor the solution to behave in a way that fits industry-specific solutions and verticals. So we've got accounting in there, we've got healthcare, franchises, financial service companies, non-for-profits, hospitality, wholesale, so on and so on. And those instances of Intacct will look quite not familiar, because they will be tailored so that the information and the KPIs that we're tracking in there are tailored to that specific industry. So hospitality, for example, will look completely different to a non-for-profit instance as well. So we can tailor Sage Intacct to behave in a way, if you've got any unique requirements, if you've got a US operation that requires US reporting, so on and so forth, we can tailor that inside Sage Intacct to make it behave in a way that fits that vertical. So because of that cloud nature, and it goes back to my very first point around, we're moving away from a traditional ERP system where we're trying to shoehorn everything into one software. What we've done with Intacct is put it inside that open API, which gives us the freedom of choice. So what Sage have done is said, right, we want a financial solution that will give you automated month-end processes. It'll give you deeper granular reporting. It'll give you KPIs. It'll give you real-time information. But we then want to open it up to allow you to go and create your own tech stack and your own ecosystem. So for example, if you had a CRM software, we get a lot of people come to us and say, I've got a CRM software, it's not LinkedIn. Now with Intacct, because it has that open API, we can, well, it allows you to go and get any other industry specific solution that fits your business. And we can take that data and then put it into the finance system. So that could be operational, it could be warehouse management, it could be marketplaces such as Shopify, Amazon, it could be point of sale, it could even be a service software. So to give you a referenceable example, we've dealt with the fire and security industry quite a lot. They use industry-specific tools such as Simpro, which manages maintenance, bookings, small projects, all that kind of stuff for the fire and security industry. We've then integrated that solution into Sage Intacct using that open API. So usually they'll be acquiring divisions. They're quite heavy in terms of number of companies and stuff like that as well. So we're pulling all that data and putting it inside of Sage Intacct. And then we can start to use the tools that are inside Sage Intacct as well. So when they looked at this, they did a bit of a survey where they thought, right, what are people not gaining from financial solutions? What is slowing people down? And usually it's around month-end close processes when we're taking stuff out to spreadsheets and manipulating data and stuff like that. And a few of the key points on there were journal entries. So 51% of the time is spent doing journal entries at month-end, 47% of that time spent doing bank reconciliations, and then 56% of that time's reviewing transaction anomalies. And then more staggering than that, over 50% of finance leaders hadn't adopted any processes around automating those as well. So we're still quite happily, merrily away, spending that time doing stuff at month end. And then we can't produce month end figures until week 1, week 2, week 3, following the month end close. So what do we put inside Intacct that makes it different? And what do we do that helps speed up that process? So AI, you probably sick to death of hearing around AI, but it is a tool now that's being leveraged in finance, and we're finding people trying to adopt that as quickly as possible. So within the Intacct solution itself, we've got stuff such as AP automation, which some of you will be familiar with. What that does, gives you a dedicated inbox. You receive a supplier invoice in a format. It's going to scan that invoice, read all the dimensional data off there, post it directly into Sage Intacct instance for you. So it removes that bottleneck of somebody sat there manually entering purchase invoices. We just allow the system to do it for us. We've got something called close automation that's released just lately, which is centered around Sage Copilot, which I'll come on to later. For anybody that enters timesheets or has time that needs to be billed, there's a tool called Sage Intelligent Time. Again, that leverages AI, so it starts to read your computer's activity, it can read your Outlook calendar, and it can make suggestions for timesheets before that posts it into the system as well. The one that I like the best, because I've got a financial background, is the GL outlier detector, and that's what we call machine learning. So when that's switched on inside Intacct, what that's doing is reviewing your postings inside your general ledger. So it's looking for transaction anomalies based on patterns of behavior. So if we always posted bank charges to 7901 and types 7109 and hit save, it's going to flag it as a GL outlier because the system's reading those transactions. It knows the last 11 times you posted it to 7901. Now you've hit 7109, it's going to flag it. It might sound like a gimmick, but what that does is it removes that month-end audit where we're looking down trial balances or looking through nominal activities, searching for erroneous transactions that might have landed in the wrong nominal code. Somebody might have hit £1,000 instead of £100. The system's going to bring us to our attention at the point of entry. Therefore, it speeds up that close process. And as I touched on before, search out the Copilot. So we've now got Copilot baked into Sage Intacct, so it becomes sort of self-serve. If you get stuck, you can't remember how to reverse a transaction, so on and so forth, you've now got a native tool in there where you can ask Copilot from within Intacct. So they're just some of the examples of the AI that automates that close process in there. One of the big ones as well, and another big difference, as I touched on earlier, between Sage 200 and Sage Intacct is the multi-entity nature of the platform itself. Now, if we think we've got a problem with month end in one company and we have 5 companies, that's 5 problems we've got. So within Intacct itself, we have the ability to run all of those individual companies from something called the top level. So we will get a holistic view of all of those companies within the platform itself. On top of that, we can then automate all the transactions that happen between those companies. So any month-end recharges that happen between various different companies, we'd get the system to automate them. We'd get it to post the eliminations as well at that point. So if we're trading between companies, we can post the eliminations. And then we can create different consolidated books. So you see on that screen there, I've actually got multi-company ones with different base currencies. So if you do have foreign operations, it can handle that as well. So we could be running different companies in different countries and still have that automation around month-end close and around consolidation for you as well. Once we've got all of that data inside Sage Intacct, and as I said before, this is where it comes into its own in terms of how much of a powerful tool it is. We see a lot of Sage 50, Sage 200 customers coming to us looking for better reporting tools, looking for BI tools as well. We've got that inside of Sage Intacct via the Interactive Visual Explorer. So if we've created that ecosystem where we've got an operational system, we've got a CRM system, we've connected all that into the finance system in Sage Intacct, we can then start to build out those visualizations that we get with tools such as Power BI. But we're removing the need to have expensive data lakes where we're pulling from different systems. So long as we've got that data inside Sage Intacct, we can use the Interactive Visual Explorer, and you can present and narrate on these as well. If we're sat in board meetings or management meetings, we can use those tools to create that visualization as well. So what does it all mean at the end of it all? Obviously, the quicker the close, the bigger the impact. So as part of that study that Sage did, they found that companies on the cloud, because of the nature of the cloud, it's easier to deploy AI tools and automation on there. So we've seen a 25% benefit on there. On average, 24 days each year automating the close. To give you a real world example on that front, I've sat with various different finance teams where it's taken them 2-3 weeks to get to month-end close, and then I kind of flip it on the head and ask them a question of, well, what would you do with that time back? Sometimes it's a little bit frivolous and it gets mentioned about going on holiday and stuff like that. But what I'm actually getting at is we've got trained finance professionals where we're utilizing their time to do manual spreadsheets to get us to end results. Actually, if we adopt some of this automation in there, we're giving them that time back to make decisions on that data as well. Again, 82% of finance leaders are saving on headcount costs through automation, which is a little bit of a tough area to broach, but we obviously know in terms of NI increases and stuff like that, usually as companies scale, we look at taking on additional headcount. So what we're leveraging here is the power of the system to avoid that need for additional headcount. We don't want to be taking staff members on that are going to sit and just process all day if we can use automation tools that are going to process for us to get us to that end result. So what does the future look like as well with Intacct? So I've got all the A's on here. So I've touched on AI before and automation. We recently went to Barcelona for the Sage Partner event where they've just launched what's called authentic agentic AI. So AI is here to stay. We use it in chatbots, on web pages, all that kind of stuff. But agentic AI now means that we can ask the system human language questions via Sage Copilot. So you'll see on the left-hand side, we said to Sage Copilot there, can you show me budget variance analysis year to date? The system's gone away, pulled us a report and actually shown it. We can then ask it human questions on there. So can you explain why operating expenses are over budget or under budget? And it will go away and it will look through the transactions and it will give us a report to explain that for us as well. So that's the next level of AI that's coming with that. Sage Copilot itself. Apologies if no sound comes through on this, but I have tried to get it with sound. But I just wanted to play a little short video just to show you what Copilot is and what's coming with Copilot. So hopefully this will play with sound. There we go. I always like the jazzy stuff. Right. So to give you an example of a current customer of ours, a little bit of a case study, and just touching on some of the key points that I've touched on already. So the company in question, Valiant, they moved from Sage 200, but the standard version. So they were on the cloud version of Sage 200. What they were experiencing were growth problems, and again, centered around cost centers. So they acquire failing pubs, and then they pump a load of money into those pubs, turn them around, and then put them as multi-managed tenancy pubs as well. And they take that on. So at the time of speaking to us, when they were looking at moving software, they'd got 75 pubs under their remit. So again, that was 75 cost centers, extra 75 nominal codes for everything throughout their chart of accounts. They then became private equity funded and private equity backed. So they needed to create various different companies in their system as well, where monies were going to flow into there, which was used to then purchase more pub properties and bring them on board. But they're experiencing really big growth challenges. So we went in, we did a demonstration, and we talked around how we can add those multiple companies. So we can add those top cos, investment companies, private equity companies on there and have the trading entities sit below that. But then, as we saw before, use that multi-entity tool to then eliminate and move all that money around between those companies as well. So that was a key point for them. We managed to reduce down their chart of accounts hugely, so they can now report on different dimensions as well without that big long ticketed chart of accounts. What we then did as part of that discovery is we found that they had 2 staff who sat all day, every day, entering EPOS takings from those pubs into their system. So it was their sole job to do that. What we then explored was, right, well, we have an open API in Sage Intacct, then you have an EPOS system. How do we get that data into Sage Intacct? So we built out the connection, and then what happens now is we poll overnight. So when them 2 staff members come in the morning, they're presented with a dashboard inside Sage Intacct that lists all of the EPOS takings from the pubs that have polled overnight. So again, saving that time, they can then make decisions on which pubs are failing, which pubs maybe takings are dipping, stuff like that. So they can start to make decisions on the data because we've brought it to them. They're not just sat manually emptying it. As I've touched on before, they can now recharge centrally. So again, using that group structure that they've got inside Sage Intacct, we've automated the process of moving funds around, whether that's loan repayments, whether it's eliminating trade between the 2 companies as well. What that's allowed them to do over on the left in green is actually recently acquire their 100th pub. So they've gone from 75 pubs to 100 pubs now, but they haven't experienced any difficulties in doing so. We've not created a whole new raft of nominal codes. Actually, what we've done is automate a lot of those processes that's allowed them to do that quite seamlessly as well. Right, enough of me talking. What I will do now is, as we are for time, I'll probably spend a quick 10 minutes and I will open Sage Intacct for those of you that's not seen it before, just to give you a flavour of the product, and then we'll sort of go to a little bit of a Q&A at the end. So bear with me a second. Right, Sage Intacct. So hopefully you can all see that screen that we've got open now. This is Intacct as its platform. And as I've said before, it's a fully cloud-based platform. So you'll see that I'm logged in just directly into a web page there. First point to note, as I touched on before, is top level. So the instance that I'm working in at the moment has 7 different companies in there. So when we want to change between different companies, quite simply, we click that button, we're going to open a new web page, and we're in the company in question. So we'll see that it changes there. So we're now in Kinspeed Holdings Company. What I can do in Intacct when we've got a multi-entity environment is actually I can stay at top level and I can do all of my transactions at top level. Now, the reason I can do all my transactions at top level is that dimensional tagging, because each of those entities there is actually a location. So when I process an accounts payable invoice at top level, I can say to it, the dimension is 300 Kinspeed Holdco, and it will post it into that relevant company. So again, we can restrict user roles down so that they can only log into those individual companies. But as a finance head, I want to stay at top level and I want to see everything for all the companies, and I just want to process there without logging in and out. And that's the makeup of the product. One of its biggest unique selling points is the dashboards that we get out of Sage Intacct as well. So to give you an idea of dimensions, if I go into this particular dashboard, once it loads up, you'll see there across the top, I've got what are called performance cards. So this is giving me snapshots of information straight away to look at revenue for licensing, revenue for support, revenue for consultancy, any other revenue, and a total revenue figure. You'll notice we've got a nice green arrow because we're actually tracking that against budget within the system. So the system is telling me we're actually up on budget. How do I know that? Well, what you'll find is it's a move away from static reporting in Sage 50 and Sage 200, and everything inside Intacct is hyperlinked. So when I click into that license revenue, I'm now going to see I've got my master budget in there and I've got my actual budget figures there. So that's how I know what that performance card is telling me. If I wanted to get a little bit more granular, I could click again and I'm into the general ledger report. So I can start to see what's made up that revenue. So again, it's designed to give you information as quickly and clearly as possible. So if that arrow was red and I wanted to investigate it, 2 clicks later, I'm into my general ledger and I can start investigating why revenues come down in that particular instance. All self-manageable as well. So we have the ability to add components to there as well. So we can add different performance cards if we wanted to change those. But I'm focusing solely on revenue on this dashboard. So where we've got revenue trend by dimension in here, this is actually a physical report from within inside Sage Intacct that I can get to up in the reports library, but we've published this to our dashboard because this is how we're tracking our revenue and it will track it in real time. So we'll see there, we're now looking at operating locations, which is driven by the dimensions to make up that revenue. We're then looking at classifications. So how would Kinspeed classify its revenue? We'd classify it by licenses, support, and consultancy and development work. So we've got another angle of analysis for revenue. Then we want to profile what industry our customers are in. Are they in retail? Are they in wholesale? Are they in manufacturing? Are they in professional services? And then we want to have a look at the actual items that make up that revenue. So are we selling Sage licenses, Cycon licenses, or Dracer licenses as well? And then any of the sales reps that are attributed to making up that revenue as well. So I've gone from one static revenue figure to 5, 6, 7 different angles of analysis to be able to look at that. And I've published it to a dashboard to be able to make that decision. And again, we get some nice graphical formats over on here so we can start to see where licenses, support, consultancy and development comes in, what those items are that make it up, where those locations come from, any revenue by project as well. As I said before, it is drillable. So when we click that, it is going to open and give us the makeup of that behind as well. So we can dive into that. If, as I said before, we're looking at that at the moment, I am still at top level. So the figures that I'm being displayed on screen right now are made up of those 7 companies. I haven't had to do any consolidation. I haven't had to put spreadsheets side by side when I've taken trial balances out and looked at revenue in isolation. The system has grouped them together and given them to me. So if you keep your eye on those figures, if I actually just drop into one of the trading companies underneath, it will open the same dashboard, but it will only reflect the figures that belong to that individual entity that I've selected. So now that support revenues come down there, the license revenues come down there. It might be that it only particularly sells a particular product from within that company itself. What we spend a lot of time doing as well is building out something called the role-based dashboards. So we all have various different roles within our duties within finance. So we want to get you information as quickly as possible. So we will build you a dashboard that would give you the information that you need to do your daily duties. One of the nice ones is the CFO dashboard. So the likelihood is we're going to get questions asked from top level around how's the company performing, so on and so forth. Again, I'm in Kinspeed 2 now, so it's only looking at Kinspeed 2. But if I went into the same dashboard and had a look at the company performance as a whole, because that's what the CFO is interested in, I can now see the company performance. So I'm looking at revenue, costs versus any incomes and losses. I can start to look at chargeability rates, salary and wage expenses by department. Keep scrolling when it catches up with itself. Operating margins. We can even start to track statistics inside Sage Intacct, which we haven't been able to do in software like Sage 50 and Sage 200. So every time we acquire a new customer, a statistical account's updated in there so we can start to track. We can do that on revenue per head count, overhead revenue, all that kind of stuff as well. We can start to bake that in. We did one for a hospitality company. So we actually had a statistical account in there that was tracking revenue per seat. So how many seats have we got? How many people can we seat in the bar? How many can we seat in the restaurant? Right, let's have a look at our revenue and then let's figure out what the revenue per seat is. And we can do that as well using those statistical accounts in there. We can even get a granular start mapping debt ratios and stuff like that. We also see cash as king in finance. So again, we can start to look at cash flow statements. We can start to look at debt trends. We can build out that cash flow statement in there. We can see how cash is moving on a weekly and a monthly basis, and we can change and tailor those reports to display that for you. But jumping back onto those role base as well, if you worked in, say, accounts payable, and that was your sole job, we would build you an accounts payable dashboard. What do I need as part of my accounts payable role? I need to know what the balance of the creditors are. I need to know if there's any creditors that are intercompany as well, because we're running multiple companies. But more importantly, I need to know what my cash on hand is. If I'm going to be making a payment run, I need to know what the cash on hand is. Because it's hyperlinked, I can go and see where that cash is. Is it all sat in a deposit account or an investment account that I can't get my hands on? No, I can actually see I've got funds available in our bank accounts to be able to service those creditors. And again, using statistical accounts, I can start to see what days payable outstanding we've got. So we're currently tracking it at 71. Why are we tracking at 71? Well, actually, we've put a policy reminder on our dashboard that says as a business, we want to be 70 to 75 days payable outstanding as a key metric. So I can now get the system to track that for me. We publish your age credited report in there, pretty standard report that everybody's looking at. We then build out a custom navigation. So where would you go as part of your daily role? I'd create a supplier, I'd create an invoice, I'd approve an invoice, I'd pay invoices. So we put hyperlinks in there that'll take you exactly to where you want to be in the system. So I'm now within a screen there where I can start to pay those bills as well. So we spend quite a lot of time in the project process of building out those dashboards for you. Another nice one to show you would be the controller role. So this is flipping it on its head now. So this is somebody that sits above AP and AR. So what we're looking at is actuals versus budgets. We've got budgets in the system. We want to know where we're tracking. So we've got the AP balance, the AR balance, and the cash on hand balance again. But now we've got profit and loss actual versus budget. So again, that format is a physical report inside of Sage Intacct. But what we've done this time is apply conditional formatting to bring it to our attention when we're over budget. So rather than it being a month-end process and reviewing budget and having a look and thinking maybe we've overspent there, we're actually getting the system to tell us beforehand. So if we looked at operating and maintenance expenses, for example, we know that's already £48,000 over budget, which kicks off a chain of events where we then go and investigate that. But with Intacct, as I've proven once already before, it's hyperlinked. So why am I over budget? So I'll go in and have a look in my general ledger report, spot a transaction in there for £50,000. Why have we got a £50,000 spend in operating and maintenance expenses? Hit that again, somebody's coded software and licensing to operating and maintenance expenses. So again, within one simple dashboard, we've answered a question in 2 or 3 clicks. Now, I won't do it as a quiz, but if we remember back to some of the AI automation tools we've got in there, general ledger outlier detector would have picked that transaction up because it's being miscoded. So we shouldn't get to this point, but it's to show you the power that when we do get to that point, we can use conditional formatting to highlight it to ourselves. And again, you'll see up on the top there, any reports or any processing that we do in Intacct, we do have the ability to email directly out. We do have the print. We also have the ability to add the dashboard. So these are completely tailorable. If you're in a report or you're amending a report inside the software, you can then add it to your own dashboard and you can start to work from that dashboard itself. Further down that screen, as I touched on before, approvals. So we've got multiple levels of approval that go through that system. So that could be at accounts payable level, it could be at accounts receivable level, it could be at journal entry level. What we don't want to be doing is combing through the system and trying to find out what needs approving. You will receive an email in your inbox if you're the approver or the requisitioner for when stuff's approved, or we bring it to your attention on your dashboard. So you know you've got outstanding transactions that need approving in there as well. Just conscious of time. So what I'll show you just finally is the reports. So within reporting in Intacct itself, as I said, it's a really, really powerful tool that we've got in there in terms of that reporting. A lot of that, what you're seeing on the dashboards behind, is driven by this report center. So we have the report center up the top, which is where all our reports live. We've got our financial graphs, financial reports, and then we've got some of the advanced tools. So interactive custom reports, and then the visual explorer that we saw before, which is the Power BI tool that we've got inside Intacct itself. If I go into the report center, you'll see the various amount of reports that we've got in there from a financial perspective and a transactional perspective. So if I do all applications and I do a quick scroll, you'll see the list of reporting that we get in there is quite endless. Also, what you'll see is we've got report types. So we get 2 types of report: analysis, which are our transactional reports. We get financial statements, which are our financial statement reports. We also get the ability to give them reports an audience. So with that, you think, well, why do I want to give them an audience? That allows us to group those reports and then automate the distribution of them. So if you see over on my balance sheet there, I've got a little calendar. So that balance sheet is part of a board pack that, if I edit that, is scheduled down here in the schedule to occur every month and email out to myself as part of a balance sheet board monthly pack. So if we have to present directors or owners or anybody internally with packs of reports at month end, we can get the system to automate that journey. So we want the board pack to pick up any report that's got a report audience as board, email it out. You also have the ability to store it in Intacct, and you also have the ability to store it in the cloud. So if you've got OneDrive folders, Google Drive folders, it will do both. It will email out, it will then store those packs of reports in there as well. One nicety in there is the recurrence. So we could get that report to recur every day, every week, every month, every year, or following general ledger close. So that would be an automated trigger inside the system that we're basically saying, right, the last thing we close is general ledger, because we know then our figures are correct. Intacct will take that trigger and send out your board pack report, because we know there's going to be no changes to that at that point. So we can get it to automate it and pick it up at GL close as well. So back into the report center. We see a various load of reports in there. So if I just pick on favorites, for example, this is where you'll see dimensions coming into play. So if you look at a profit and loss account that we've got a standard, that's going to launch. So we've got an ability there, bit of criteria, run the report. It's a standard P&L report that we've all seen 1,000,001 times. We've got revenue, cost of sales, operating expenses. We are actually tracking a statistic in this one. So we're working out revenue per employee in there. But from that standard report, it's hyperlinked. So again, we could dive into the details in there. We could actually email the report from within the report itself, give it a subject, send it out. What format do we want to send it in? What we then do is use the dimensions to take that report to another level. So in this particular example, I've used the location dimension to take the same report, but now I'm looking at it by my location companies in there. So it's a different angle of analysis in there. We could get right down to running it by class. Any of those dimensions that we've got in there, we can tailor them as well. One nicety as well is if anybody's worked with the previous Sage reporting tools, they are quite difficult to work with. Usually that requires sort of interjections from ourselves. Now what we've got is the ability to come into a self-service report writer and change the stuff in there as well. So if we wanted to amend anything in there, what budget is the report looking at? Is it looking at current year, master, project budget, internal projects? You can come in and just alter these and the angle of the report changes. We could even go as far as saying expand that out by one of the dimensions that we've got in the system. So we're not doing joins of tables and stuff like that and report designers. We can come in here and we can self-service reports as well. Usually what we'd say is duplicate the report, play around with it, save and done. You've then got a brand new report. So we could get a P&L report that looks at revenue by customer, cost of sales by supplier, operating expenses by department, and then have it blown out by all our locations across the right-hand side as well. And it'd be 3 changes to the report layout, and then we'd get that in there. Just finally, in terms of conscious of time, obviously you get everything that you would expect from within your software itself. So if you're going into cash management, that's where you come in to start doing bank reconciliation, so on and so forth. And the layout of the software is really easy, but generally we'd drive that from your dashboard. So what do you do on a daily basis? And then we drive it from that dashboard as well. So with that, as that's a whistle-stop tour, I will jump back into my slides. Final thing, so of those not fully on the cloud, 73% are looking to move to the cloud in the next 2 years. So we've already seen AI come in, and we're already seeing that inside software like Sage Intacct on the cloud. I would imagine in another 2 years' time, that agentic AI is then going to be start running through them softwares, and we start to ask it those human language questions as well. I'm going to stop at that point, and then if anybody wants to ask any questions, I think we can do a little bit of a Q&A.